On this episode of Sea Level, I speak with Chandra Davis, attorney and co-founding partner of ELS, the Employment Law Solution Firm. So, Chandra, thank you so much for being on the episode. I'm excited about this episode because one of the biggest things when an entrepreneur or somebody scales, you're going to need to hire people, right? And you are the expert in this field, and you're going to give a whole, a background and everything on the right and wrong ways of doing it. So, but first, I'm very interested in people's stories. So, give me your background. Where'd you start? Where'd you grow up, and how'd you get into law? And what are you doing right now?
Well, my background.
Yep.
I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised.
Yep. Bloomfield. So.
Plainfield.
There you go. Okay.
And spent 18 years of my life in New Jersey.
Yep.
I went to a very small private school called the Pingree School in New Jersey, and I knew that I wanted to live somewhere else, different. Mm-hmm. I loved growing up in Jersey. I'm glad I'm from there, but I was ready to experience some different aspects of life.
Did you miss the cold, like the snow and stuff?
I miss seeing the snow.
Yeah, I don't miss the snow.
I don't miss being in the snow, per se, especially as an adult.
Yeah.
But I miss snow days. Yeah. Like snow days were the bomb.
Yeah. Right.
Which was really ice, and then snow on top of it.
Yeah.
Then you were good.
Yeah. Scratching it off in the morning.
Absolutely, right? But when I decided to look at colleges, I went and looked at lots of different colleges. I probably was the college advisor's favorite kid because I was in there all the time trying to decide where I wanted to be. Yeah. And I went to my small school in the 80s and 90s did not have many African American students at all. So I wanted to date. So I decided I was going to go to a place where there were more African American males. Yeah. And so I came down to Atlanta and went to Emory University, but we have the Morehouse College and lots of other universities in the area. And did not find my husband there, but I loved Emory. And from Emory, I have worked in the higher education field. And so I went to the University of Georgia for my master's degree in higher ed.
Bulldogs.
Go Dogs, sick 'em. And loved it, but never lost my desire to be a lawyer. Just growing up, I was always told that I argued well, that I engaged well, that I was articulate. So being a lawyer was something I always thought I wanted to do. And then even after my master's degree, I decided I still wanted to go to law school. And I worked in my field in higher ed at Virginia Tech. That's where I picked up the husband. And he is a Hokie. And then lived in DC. I went to Georgetown. I actually worked at Georgetown University Law Center. And then applied for law school and ended up at Michigan Law School. And I am a Wolverine, go blue, all day, every day. And very proud of it, and enjoyed my time at University of Michigan, which is where I eventually picked up my law partner. We went to law school together, Jamala McFadden. And you fast forward, I ended up I clerked for 2 federal judges. I lived in South Africa, working with the South African Human Rights Commission, and then decided to come back to the States. And then I worked at a large law firm here in Atlanta, and worked for the EEOC as a trial attorney for 4 years. And then my law partner and very good friend, Jamala, said she was thinking about leaving her large law firm, Sutherland, and starting her own firm. And she's like, and I want you to do it with me. And I was like, I got a good government job.
Right.
I don't need to go anywhere. And I thought about it, and I said, if you're going to do something, then do that in your early 40s. Not your late 40s, because late 40s you start thinking about retirement. And so we did it. And
what was that like the decision to make that pivoting moment to step out completely on your own and break free from something comfortable?
I could not believe I was doing it.
Yeah.
Because if you'd asked me in law school, are you going to start your own law firm? I'd have been like, heck no. Are you on something? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, and realized that that's what I was doing when I was starting my own law firm. And we were taught how to practice law, not necessarily be business people. So it has been a learning curve, including hiring people. So now I feel the pain of entrepreneurs when they have to hire someone. And I don't always follow my own advice. Hire slow, fire fast. Don't always do that.
Right.
But what we did do is some of the basic things. One is know that once you hire someone, You should really be thinking about Fair Labor Standards Act, minimum wage, posters, something as simple as putting
them,
the EEOC
Yep,
EEO posters, the FLSA posters, workers' comp, like all those things, just having them up, even if some of the laws don't apply to you,
Right.
just so that you know you're compliant. Also, deciding whether to hire someone as an employee or an independent contractor.
So explain the difference, because I mean, some people out there may not know.
So an independent contractor is truly somebody who you give a single project to, you give them bare parameters, and they can do it when and how they want. The proverbial example is a house painter. I want my house painted blue. I need it done by November 1st. And you can't start before 9 a.m. because the HOA says you can't start before 9 a.m. making noise. That's all. How he does it or she does it, how many people he or she uses, whether they wait until October 31st to paint my house, as long as it's done by November 1st, it has a certain workman. That's an independent contractor. An employee is, I need you here by 9 a.m. every day. You can take a break at 12. I want you to use my computer. I want you to do certain things. I'm giving you tasks as they go along. I'm reviewing those tasks as they go along. I have a lot more control. It's all about control. And the Department of Labor, who enforces the Fair Labor Standards Act, default is employee. So you have to prove to them that the person actually is an independent contractor. And I tell employers all the time, you can call a horse a zebra, you can paint stripes on it. It is still, the DNA is still a horse.
Right.
And the Department of Labor looks at the DNA.
Yep.
And so you have to be really careful.
Yep.
And I tell them, if you're not sure, default to an employee. But it's hard because there's taxes involved, and I get it. Because when we first started, I was like, do we really have to hire employees yet? And my law partner was like, really? We're employment lawyers. Are you really going to push for an independent contractor when you know the better? And I was like, you're right. So I understand the pain of it, but it's really important. And I tell them, people, as you grow, have a contact with an employment lawyer so that when you get ready to fire the pregnant lady, you know you're doing it properly.
Right.
And it's not that you can't fire her or him or a man of color or whatever. It's just you want to make sure you're doing it right and for the right reasons. And so that's having that relationship, and that's one of the reasons we started the firm. We wanted to give both large companies, we represent large Fortune 500 companies, retailers, and so forth, and we represent what some people call mom and pops. And they may have 5 employees, but they have some issues that are going on, or they just want to know that they're doing things properly, which is the more proactive and safer and less expensive way to go.
Yeah.
Or they're growing and leaps and bounds, and they have 50, 15, 20 employees and know they need to get handbooks in place and other things in place, and we help them that way.
Let's talk about that. So what are some of the things that an employer needs to have in place before they hire their first employee? Like, what should they have internally?
My first thing would be a job description. Know what you want the person to do.
Clear objectives.
Clear objectives, and know that you are paying minimum wage, and that you're complying with the state laws, giving people proper breaks, all that kind of stuff. But I think the first thing is a job description. If you have your first employee, you don't necessarily need a handbook at that point.
Right.
You don't necessarily want an employment contract. We're an at-will state here in Georgia, and that really means that you or the employee can terminate that relationship at any point in time on your end as the employer, as long as it's not for an illegal reason, like because of a protected category, like disability, religion, national origin, that sort of pregnancy. Those protected categories, you can't terminate someone because of those. But anything, you're a blue shirt today, Chris, I don't like blue today, you're fired.
Really? Interesting.
There's no reason why I can't.
Wow. So all states are different, right?
All states are different. Wrongful termination is very hard to prove, and not a great claim to make. There are others that are better, even in state laws in Georgia, but we don't have a lot of employment laws in Georgia. But yeah, for any reason. I mean, because the reason could be blue, could be I feel like there's some constriction in the market, and I need to let you go because I want to make sure we are making profit, we're profitable. but it can be for pretty much any reason. And you too can quit for any reason. You don't like the way I talk to you today.
Right,
You can say,
right.
I quit.
Right.
So it goes both ways. But yeah, I think it's really important that you just kind of think ahead. And when you have someone that you can call to bounce ideas off of, it is a lot less expensive. And when we started our firm, we promised ourselves that we prefer our clients to call us and not bill them for the 15-minute call than to not call us because they're worried about it's going to cost them $50.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So we're very, very committed to that. And our large clients appreciate our accessibility and our commitment to diversity. One of our clients is AT&T, and we just received their award, their Diversity and Inclusion Award, for their pipeline.
Cool, congratulations.
Thank you very much. We work really hard to make sure there are more women and people of color who are coming through the legal field and feel like there's a place where they can practice. Our lawyers are people. If you go to our website, you hover over our picture, you see our professional lawyer picture, and then you hover over it and you'll see a picture of my law partner, Zumba, dancing. Me on my way on traveling somewhere, because that's my favorite thing to do. One of our associates loves martial arts, and you'll see a picture of her in that stance. So we want to create an environment where our clients feel like they can call us and talk to us, but where our attorneys feel like they can have a life of their own.
So I'm obviously, there's a lot of things that we do, and one of the things that we do is help CEOs with their personal brands or public figures with their personal brands and building audiences. And what I always say is like, you have your business, but people want to know you as a person too. They want to know what your hobbies are, and that can only really help, what your business really, because you never know, like, you're from Jersey or you're, a Dogs fan, right? Whatever, they're connecting with you, and eventually that's business. So don't always just be so corporate. I like the fact that you guys are just not,
And being a lawyer is relationship driven. My husband's been in sales, and he always says people buy things from people they like.
Right.
People want to purchase your services with people they like. Because, to be honest, there are a lot of good lawyers. There are also a lot of good L&E lawyers, labor and employment lawyers. But you want to work with someone that you have a good relationship with, that you can talk to, that you can be, somewhat vulnerable with about your business. And we want to work with people we like too. So I think that's really important as you advance in your building your business. But those basic things are things you should just check off your list.
Right.
And have someone to call. Like, we want to be that firm, that lawyer that you can call when you need some help. Awesome. That's really important to us.
So what's the difference? Like, what are you finding? Is it different when you're working with a smaller mom and pop store as opposed to a larger corporation, or how is there differences between how you go about, helping those two entities?
A little bit, because usually when we're dealing with a large corporation like an AT&T or something like that, I'm dealing with in-house counsel. So I'm dealing with other lawyers, most of the time other labor and employment lawyers, that was their specialty or is their specialty. So some of the things I don't have to explain. So I don't have to explain some of the procedural things. I don't have to explain some of the strategic things because of how L&E works. So when I'm dealing with an owner or an HR director or an HR person who is not well seasoned, then I have to explain a little bit more about the process. But I have a master's degree in education, so that's not a burden to me. I don't mind explaining because I think I need you to be a partner, and I need to be your partner in this journey of representing your company. So I need you to understand what's going on so that you can weigh in, because you know your business better than anyone.
Right.
And so I want to make sure we're representing your business at the best of our ability. So partnering is part of what we do. We send monthly updates to clients. We really try to stay engaged with our clients and answer any questions they have.
I mean, it's hard because, like, what I always say, with business owners, and entrepreneurs, you got so much on your plate. You need to have a team of experts surrounding you. You can't be an expert in everything. It's impossible. So you might know a little bit, but especially when you're hiring people, like when you're hiring, the company's made up of people. Company would not exist. It's not one person. It's made up of people. And if you're not doing the right things, in getting these people legally or whatever, you could be putting your company at risk. So hiring somebody like you, especially if you're able to, tell them the reasons why you need to do it this way, I could see a lot of value in that.
And creating company culture is
Yes.
so important. And making sure someone's a good cultural fit for your company. Because
What are some of the ways you can go about doing that?
it really takes some time and energy. I think it takes really, first of all, being self-aware. And there's something called emotional intelligence, really understanding who you are and how you function so that you can be very transparent when you're hiring somebody about how you function. I'm a communicator. I want you to over-communicate with me because I don't know what's off my plate until you've told me you're taking it off my plate. And otherwise, I'm worrying about it.
Right.
And I can move space in my brain for something else. So knowing who you are, how you communicate is really important. And knowing the kind of environment you want to live in. I don't want to be in an environment where I can't give hugs.
Right.
I'm not saying I have to hug everybody I meet. I'm saying, even though in this is Me Too, being very sensitive to sexual harassment, I'm going to take verbal cues from someone about hugging. I may ask you, is it okay for me to hug you? But I don't want to live in a world where we can't give hugs, or at least my world that I helped create. And so knowing those things about yourself, I think is really key in creating that cultural environment. And then asking poignant questions, taking your time, hiring slow, which I don't always do, but hiring slow is really important. And taking the time to get to know someone. We do an exploratory period where we really give an opportunity for the new employee to get to know our team and us, and for us to get to know them. And sometimes it's not a good fit, and you part ways, and that's okay. But you really want to make sure that you're creating an environment. And when you figure out, maybe even a year in, that it's not a good fit, don't prolong it and be honest.
So what do you feel about having like a trial period, like 3 months, we'll revisit this in 3 months, whether it's internally or whatever, with an employee? Is that a good way to kind of, work with them? Because anybody can sell themselves in an interview.
Absolutely.
They can sell you a bag of lies. They can tell you things that you just want to hear, and it sounds great, and then you make a bad decision. But what I find is it's fruit over time, right?
Absolutely.
So you're looking at. So what about, is that something that would be advisable?
I definitely recommend it. I think I recommend it for both sides. Again, even in the interview process, I encourage people to ask us questions. I encourage you to say, you're interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing you, because you don't want to be in a place that you're going to be uncomfortable or that you're not a good fit. If you have a trouble getting to work on time, you probably don't want to work for me. I mean, but there are other places where it's a lot more fluid about being on time or things like that.
Transparency, I think, is the golden rule when it comes to employer relationship, because just be like, hey, listen, I'm honest. These are the things that we're looking for as a company. But also, if you can't be in on a certain hour, if there's something that you're helping your family or something with a situation every Friday, just let us know.
Because I can work with that.
Well, exactly.
I
Just
might be able to work
transparent.
with that.
Don't call out sick when you're not really sick. Like, that's one of the things.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. I had that conversation recently. Is if you need a mental health day and you need to work from home because you're going to fly out to have a long weekend, I can work with that. I can't be every Friday, but I can work with that. But if you have a family member you need to help every Friday, I can work through that. We can figure out something. But, I think transparency and lack of communication is so key in terms of having a failed relationship. If you have a good, honest relationship, it goes far. Trust. So I think the exploratory period is really important. And I think we do a 3 month. So that it's hard to be on your best behavior or whatever, if you will, for 3 months, right? So at some point you're going to default to your normal patterns.
I call it the honeymoon period.
Exactly.
Right? When you bring on an employee, it's like, all right, here's the honeymoon period. Staying late, coming in early, staying late. All right, let's get past this honeymoon period, and then we'll see. Really
how we work.
And
if at the end you as the employer really feel it's not a good fit, you be honest about it. And sometimes it's a wake-up call for people that they never had before. I had to terminate someone, and I realized I did it partly for their benefit, to make sure that they realized that you can't keep doing this. And this is not a good pattern to set.
So one thing I find that entrepreneurs run into is it's very difficult for them to fire. I actually struggle with that too. Like, it was very hard for me to let somebody go. But what I'm finding is that if you don't get rid of the toxin, you're going to poison the entire tree, right?
I cannot tell you how many times I've had cases where they just ignored the person. They just said, well, we'll deal with it later. And 10 years go by. And now they're like, well, I've been here 10 years and no one told me, because no one was honest, doing employment evaluations, feedback, documenting feedback, which is, I know, difficult sometimes, but those are some of the tools you can use to, one, correct people's behavior. I recommend writing people up, not necessarily because I'm trying to pepper their file with negative write-ups. What I'm trying to do is say, I probably talked to you verbally. I'm trying to tell you how important this is.
Pointing back to, hey, we already had this conversation. On this date, here it is.
Exactly. And then sometimes people don't get the verbal stuff. And they think, he's not that important. But when you see it in writing, you're like, oh, crap. They really mean this.
Yeah.
So those are tools that we use to correct behavior, not to terminate. Because it costs money every time an employer hires and terminates someone. It's costly.
Yep.
And I reckon not only in money, but time, which can be quantified into money. But and I realize that. So my first question to clients is, are you sure you want to fire this person? Is there no way to repair this relationship? Because if there is, let's work on that. If there isn't, okay, then let's figure out how we best sever our relationship.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing too. Is I think it's the job of the employer, right, to bring out the very best in their people, right?
Absolutely.
And like I always say, okay, well, how can I help you? What can I do to help you advance in your career? What are some of the tools I can give you? How can I help you? So if you're asking me for advice and I'm giving you this advice, but you continually to not do it, there's nothing more I can do to try to help you grow as in this position. So at that point in time, if we've had these conversations multiple times, we have documentation on it, that might be a clear sign. And I always heard this before, is like, most people, when you have it structured right, they fire themselves.
They do. They realize they're not cutting mustard. What is it? They know.
Yeah.
And they aren't really surprised by it because they do know. And I think, I don't know what percentage, 80, 90% of people want to do a good job. I mean, you have the slackers who don't care. But I don't think most of us are wired that way. We want to do a decent job. And you know when you're not. And you know when you're disappointing. And so you're not surprised. And they end up firing themselves, and they either move on of their own free will, or they do something they know is egregious, and they know it's over.
It's over. Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. But L&E is fun. I mean, the things people do at work, I always say I'd be embarrassed to do at home by myself. It's amazing, and they're great stories because companies are made of people.
Right.
And unfortunately, people are complicated. It's the bottom line. We're human beings and we're complicated. And so we bring some of those complications to work. And that's why it's so important to find the right fit for your team, employees. And we all bring something different to the table. One
of the things I like, Chick-fil-A has this onboarding video that they play. And, it has, and obviously being a filmmaker, it's cool because even though it's an internal video, it shows people coming into Chick-fil-A, but like somebody just came from a funeral, or something bad just happened, or somebody just lost their job or whatever, and how people respond to them makes all the difference. You never know what's going on in somebody's life, especially your employees. Sometimes something could have just happened at home, and that's why they're acting the way they are. And I think if we stop as employers and recognize, hey, these are people, there's lives that they're leading outside these four walls of this office. Let me be a little bit more cognizant of that.
That's all emotional intelligence basis, is the idea that you don't know where someone is. I've been training myself to be positive wherever I walk. When someone asks, how are you? I say, excellent. Sometimes I'm not having an excellent day, but then I think about it, I'm breathing. I have my children, my husband, my business. I am excellent, even if I'm having challenges that day. And sometimes that excellent helps lift somebody else up a little bit. Or, hey, I really like that blue shirt. Genuinely, I like your blue shirt. That might make you feel a little bit better because maybe you weren't feeling so great about yourself this morning when you got dressed.
I always say I like to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Change the temperature.
Yes.
Be positive. Change the temperature in the room.
I think that's right. And finding out the people you work with, tuning into when they are in there's a idea that you could be in your basement. That's not the time to have the compensation conversation. Is when my law partner's not feeling so great that day. That's not the right time, and it can wait a day. It's not the right time necessarily. You call someone in their office because they've been late or whatever, and you say, hey, I've noticed this. Is there something going on? And you might get some information. And then you might be like, I can work with you in these things. Let me know if there's something that we can do to make it less stressful for you, because that's not my goal. I think those kinds of conversations are so important.
Yeah.
And I think it makes your workplace a better place. I think, but being honest, I do need you to be at work on time. But if there's something hindering you, maybe there's something we can do about your shift. Maybe it's not important that you be here at 9. Maybe 9:30 is okay. But as long as you're here at 9:30 when people expect you. So I think it's just really important to have those honest conversations and recognize that lots of things happen. We were talking about Chick-fil-A, and I know I'm joining on, but the Chick-fil-A example is so important. We were talking about as consumers, you walk into Chick-fil-A and they make you feel good. They're like happy to be there.
It's their pleasure.
It's their pleasure.
Yeah.
You go to some other fast food, other kinds of restaurants, and you're like, am I interrupting you?
Right.
Is this not where you want to be? I mean, I understand that it's hard work or whatever, but I come for an experience, not just food. And so I need you to be a little bit more positive, especially when you get the non-positive. You're like, well, how are you today? And I say, I'm excellent. And they're just like, It's not a good experience.
Yeah, I think it's the trickle-down effect, right? So when the employees are being treated well, right, and they're feeling the love or whatever it is that they just really enjoying doing what they're doing, that's going to pass down to the client. Mm-hmm. And I think it's got to come from the top down. So no matter how large your corporation is, if you train your management, your senior management, and your employees, it's gonna equal to it's gonna come down to the customer.
And managing is more than being a technically proficient, a technical expert. Management is a skill in and of its own, and a lot of people are promoted to management because they're technically stellar, but have no people skills. Have no ability to engage with people, connect with people, make a team thrive, finding out what motivates people. All of that is part of management. Employees want to be heard. I can tell you, I worked for the EOC for 4 years. I can't tell you how many cases I think would never have gotten to the commission if the employer or the HR person or the manager had sat down and listened. It could have been the same answer. No, you can't have that, we can't do that, whatever. But just being heard, really feeling like you're being heard, can solve a lot of problems internally. And that's what we really motivate people to do. We do a lot of training on internal investigations, on management skills, on how to be compliant with the EEO laws, so that one of our mantras is we like to keep our employers out of trouble. We want to keep the EEOC from the Department of Labor from knocking on your door. We really want you to be successful because those distractions are not profitable. And profitable for the company usually means profitable for everyone, including the employees. And so we really want to help you be successful. And by taking some things off your plate, but you have to somehow listen to our advice sometimes about being proactive.
Right.
Which I know is hard because you're about doing the work. Sometimes thinking about these employment issues are not, top of mind.
Yeah. So in wrapping up, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to an entrepreneur that's scaling, that's getting ready to hire, what would that be?
I would say interview some employment lawyers. I would say don't try to make yourself an expert on everything, like what you brought up before. And employment law is something that you can contract out. And it's not as expensive as you think it might be. And so find an employment lawyer that's going to work with you, who's going to give you salient advice. There may be a list of things you can do, but we'll talk to you about priorities and budget. But find an employment lawyer that you can call when you need one, when you need to have questions answered. But really do, seriously, find someone
Awesome.
that you can connect with.
So hire an expert. Love it.
Hire an expert.
Yeah.
Contract out what you can contract out.
Thanks, Sandra. I really appreciate it. Thank you so
I
much.
really enjoyed
Yeah.
it. Thanks so much.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the episode. If you guys enjoyed it, show some love, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe. Also, make sure you check out our exclusive C-Level group on Facebook.